Adam Schiff is corrupt and depraved and abused his power, and I can't say I'm surprised that the media, journalists are not saying anything because it's tribal, because they don't care. And sure enough, the activists who hate Trump have no problem with the U.S. federal government spying on the private phone records of a U.S. journalist accused of no wrongdoing. I know I made a video about this yesterday in the main channel, but it has to be repeated. I'm sorry. It has to be talked about again. We have a story from the Wall Street Journal. Thank you, Wall Street Journal. Their editorial board. So I must clarify my previous statement. There certainly are principled people at news outlets that are willing to stand up to what Schiff has done here. Schiff's surveillance state by the editorial board of the Wall Street Journal. Bravo. And thank you to the real journalists who still exist. But unsurprisingly, where's CNN? MSNBC? Where's any of these journalists who are so concerned about Donald Trump destroying the freedom of the press? Trump comes out and says, "You're fake news." And they go, oh, it's the end of democracy. Oh, please. You're surprised that the president is calling you names? He's supposed to do that. Well, he's not supposed to. But of course he is. Journalists who speak truth to power will make enemies. Lo and behold, if you write bad things about the president, he insults you. Grow up. What Adam Schiff did was subpoenaed, presumably, the phone records of a U.S. citizen, a private citizen, and journalist who was accused of no wrongdoing, and then published them. So, and then sure enough, the allies in media, instead of being outraged that the U.S. government is using their powers to spy on journalists, said, wow, look how bad this journalist looks because of who he spoke to. It's the same tactic we see from the activists. Yes, journalists speak to unsavory people. We don't know what they talked about necessarily. John Solomon could have been talking with some individuals, digging into a story. And I'm sure when Adam Schiff, he shows these calls between Lev Parnas and Solomon and Giuliani, I'm sure John Solomon spoke to many, many other people. But guess what? Not only did Adam Schiff get access to his political rivals who are accused of no wrongdoing, a U.S. citizen accused of no wrongdoing, he selectively published details to insinuate there was wrongdoing. This is a shocking level of corruption that cannot be left ignored. And I only have so much reach. I can only speak to so many people. So I'll tell you this. Share this video. I've seen some comments from people, and I think for the most part, it doesn't matter. There's going to be people saying, who cares? Why are you defending Trump? I'm not. It's not about Trump. Don't care. I can criticize Trump's call about Biden. I can say that Trump shouldn't be calling for investigations into his political opponents. Fine. Absolutely. Okay? What Adam Schiff did was used the power of the federal government to force phone companies, who are not completely innocent here, to hand over the details of a journalist because Schiff doesn't like the journalist. Do you know where this brings us? This is beyond fascistic authoritarianism. And for some reason, the people without principle, the tribalists, just say, so what? So what? Schiff should do it. No, he shouldn't. Let's read what the Wall Street Journal has to say. Schiff's surveillance state. The Democrat demands and then discloses the call logs of his opponents. Democrats are trying to convince Americans that President Trump should be ousted for trying to dig up dirt on a rival. They'd have more credibility if they didn't abuse their surveillance powers for drive-by smears of Republicans and a free press. Adam Schiff's 300-page House Intelligence Impeachment Report doesn't include much new about Mr. Trump's Ukrainian interventions, but it does disclose details of telephone calls between ranking intelligence Republican Devin Nunes, Trump attorneys Rudy Giuliani and Jay Sekulow, reporter John Solomon, former Giuliani associate Lev Parnas, the White House, and others. The details are metadata about the numbers and length of the calls, not the content. The impeachment press is playing this as if the calls are a new part of the scandal. But the real outrage here is Mr. Schiff's snooping on political opponents. The Democrats' motive appears to be an attempt to portray Mr. Nunes, a presidential defender, and Mr. Schiff's leading antagonist in Congress, as a part of a conspiracy to commit impeachable offenses. Quote, "It is, I think, deeply concerning that at a time when the President of the United States was using the powers of his office to dig up dirt on a political rival, that there may be evidence that there were members of Congress complicit in that activity. You are a disgusting, corrupt monster, Adam Schiff. Disgusting corruption. This is unprecedented. I have never seen anything in my short life, 33 years, this insane. Targeting of journalists. But it's not just about the fact that he's targeting journalists. Look at Julian Assange. You see what happens with Assange? Assange did nothing out of the ordinary that a journalist would do, as far as we know. He said, if you have information, you can submit it to us and we'll publish it. You don't gotta like WikiLeaks, but news organizations do this. So they accused Assange of trying to help hack. And it's that simple. Devin Nunes is leading the Republican charge, and you might not like him. But should we allow the Democrats or just the federal government in general to subpoena the private phone records of their political rivals in matters of public debate? No. No. It's shocking and unprecedented. It is Schiff using subpoena power against his political opponents. But fine. You can let's say you hate the Republicans. By all means, you're welcome to. I take no issue. Please explain and discuss everything you find at fault with Republicans. Absolutely. How about a U.S. journalist? Please justify why the U.S. government would have the right to subpoena the private phone records of a journalist accused of no crime, without a warrant, no wrongdoing. Think about every journalistic institution that, I'll put it this way. If you think Schiff it was okay for him to go after a journalist this way, what will you say when Donald Trump and Lindsey Graham do the exact same thing? Already, we are hearing calls for the Republicans to subpoena the phone records of leftist journalists and their opponents. And if you stand by and allow Schiff to do this, then you are digging your own grave, and so be it. The partisanship needs to stop. We need to say definitively that you should not be spying on American journalists. You want to have an argument about Trump's intent, 2020? I'm absolutely right here. I disagree with the narrative presented by Schiff and Pelosi, et cetera. It's fine. But at least that's something we can all agree is being debated. And while we can argue and say, oh, it's baseless or it's merited, fine. How dare you try to justify the federal government publishing private details of a citizen who's done nothing wrong? Let's read on. They say, Mr. Schiff told the press Nunes may be complicit. Complicit in what, the Wall Street Journal asks? Doing his job of congressional oversight? Talking to Mr. Trump's lawyer to get a complete view of the Ukrainian tale? Apparently, Mr. Schiff now wants to impeach members of Congress, too. Let's put it this way. Let's say that Devin Nunes apparently contacted Lev Parnas and Trump. You don't know why. Now, by all means, you can assume wrongdoing, but we don't have any evidence of that, and neither does Schiff. Why would Schiff publish Devin Nunes' private phone records with no true probable cause? Again, you know what? Let's stop. Let's say you're sitting here right now saying, no, you don't understand. We know about the meeting and Nunes. Well, Nunes filed a suit against CNN and published photos proving he did not travel to Vienna. He was in Libya and Malta. But by all means, I will respect your right to argue against those points. Sure. Now justify why a journalist who's been accused of nothing, who is not involved outside of publishing stories that conservatives have cited, what did the journalist do to warrant this spying? What legal right does Adam Schiff have to target members of the United States free press who are protected under the First Amendment? There's nothing. There is no justification. This is unprecedented, and it looks like an abuse of government surveillance authority for partisan gain. Democrats were caught using the Steele dossier to coax the FBI into snooping on the 2016 Trump campaign. Now we have elected members of Congress using secret subpoenas to obtain and then release to the public the call records of political opponents. Our sources say Mr. Schiff issued a subpoena in September to AT&T, demanding call logs for 5 numbers, including Mr. Giuliani's. Subsequent subpoenas to AT&T and Verizon demanded more details. Republicans were told of the subpoenas, yet under rules of committee secrecy, couldn't raise public objections. Shame on you, Republicans. Grow a spine, resign, stand up and say no to the system. These people are pathetic. And I'm speaking to the Republicans right now. If I knew that where I worked had this kind of violation of civil rights against a private U.S. journalist, the first thing I would do is I would hold a press conference and say, secrecy be damned. I will step down and refuse to be a part of a system that would abuse its powers, targeting the U.S. press for political gain. But these people, they want the keys to the castle. I have no respect for any of them, and we can see it. Now, certainly, the responsibility lies on those who filed those subpoenas, and that's Schiff. But at a certain point, I don't care who you are. If you sit on this committee, if you sit in Congress and kick your feet up and say, well, the rules say I can't say it, I don't care. I don't care what the rules are. It's about time we got some backbone in our government and people stood up to the abuses of power and defended the American people and the Constitution. Instead, Nunes and every other Republican who knew about this and did nothing should be ashamed of themselves. Now I get it. Nunes is targeted in this, and again, the responsibility falls on Schiff. But where were they when these subpoenas were filed in September targeting an American journalist who is accused of no crime and no wrongdoing? Where were they? Doing nothing, protecting themselves. I would walk out of that building, rip my whatever jacket off, presuming I would ever actually wear a suit. I'd burn it on the stairs, and I would say the whole damn system is guilty, period. And I refuse to be a part of it. But that's why, I'm not in politics, and I won't run. Because even when Schiff does something like this, I'm surprised. Nobody cares. Some people care, right? The Wall Street Journal has written this up, bravo. There have been some journalists, of course. There's been some op-eds, yeah. But look at CNN. They just run with it. Ooh, this is juicy. We're going to make money. It's pathetic. There's no principle. And I can say this to the Republicans, man. Where were you? You knew about this? You knew that Adam Schiff was filed subpoenas for the private phone records of an American journalist. And what he published is only his personal choice to frame a narrative. Certainly, and the Wall Street Journal points out, Schiff has access to literally every call made by these individuals. Now, you can be upset that he subpoenaed Trump's private lawyer, and I think that's a shocking violation of constitutional protections. But then you might argue that, well, Giuliani has come up as a potential actor involved in the Ukrainian scandal. Fine. We can argue it. Fine. I think it's a dangerous precedent to start dragging someone's lawyer in who's investigating certain claims, but fine, for political reasons. Let's just say fine, okay. Justify the journalist. Justify the journalist. You can't. It can't be done. It cannot be done. We've crossed the line. And I think we're headed down a dark path, and it's only going to get worse. Because I assure you, if the Republicans weren't willing to call this out, I'd be willing to bet they're going to turn around and use those powers just right back at the Democrats, because they control the Senate. And if they win the House, don't be surprised when they play the exact same game. And that's bad. And that's dangerous. The first thing that should have happened is every Republican who knew about this should have stood up and said no. But they didn't. So here you know why? I don't like any of these people. I don't like any of these politicians. I think they're just waiting for their turn. They're hoping to get that swing in their direction. Let me tell you something. Barack Obama was voted into office. He was chosen by the American people twice. Many of the people who chose him went to choose Trump. Barack Obama had the opportunity to appoint a Supreme Court justice. And this was blocked by Republicans who said, no, we're too close to an election. Yeah? Well, what's going to happen if Ruth Bader Ginsburg leaves right now? What do you think the Republicans are going to say? Personally, you might think they're principled, but I don't. I think they'll immediately say Trump gets to pick another one. Nope. It's Trump's choice. If Barack Obama was chosen by the American people, then he has until he leaves office to choose his justice. We do not need to play games and pretend that either side is better at all. Because I assure you of one thing. I'm willing to bet that eventually the tides will flip. And what we see from the Republicans will be no different from what we see from Democrats. It's the same game played back and forth. And I know from firsthand experience. When I called out the injustices during Occupy Wall Street, I had the left and the media patting me on the back and propping me up. But as soon as it's the left violating civil rights and norms and making up fake nonsense, now all of a sudden it's the left screeching and the right is here at my back. And then the left says, Tim's a bootlicker. He'll see for sure. No, I don't care. I call it like I see it, and I'll call it out. And I have no problem pointing to the fact that Republicans were told of the subpoenas, yet under the rules of secrecy did nothing. Some things are more important than your rules of secrecy. And you know what? If I was witnessing the government abuse their power to target a journalist, I will place my hands behind my back and say this is not a country I would ever pledge allegiance to. And you can walk me down to that jail for violating your secrecy, assuming it's a criminal act. No, I would rip my tie off, my shirt, whatever. And I would say never. Absolutely not. We can see what the U.S. government has done with foreign policy, with Guantanamo Bay, with enhanced interrogations. It's just one step after another. They don't care about civil rights or the Constitution or protecting the will of the people. It is a game of power. That's all it is. And right now, because the House has it, they will abuse it and beat it to death. And why won't the Republicans come out while it was going on? Because you know that they're waiting for their turn. They say, hey, wait, hold on. Sure enough, it'll be our turn soon and we can do this. I don't care for any of these people. I don't. My biggest criticisms are typically of a corrupt press being slowly hiring in former Obama staffers and Clinton staffers, a corrupt news industry that's supposed to act as a guard for the Fourth Estate, to call out the powers that be, to speak truth to power. They don't. It's a game of power and politics. So unfortunately, it's the Wall Street Journal, which tends to be a more right-leaning, but center-right, calling out Schiff and the Democrats. And I can respect that because it's the right thing to do. But where's the rest of the press coming out and saying, we cannot live this way? Nowhere. So I'll state it one more time. I understand in this instance, the Republicans and a journalist who has stories that were beneficial to Republicans are the victims being targeted by this abuse of power. And they should have stood up the moment it happened and refused to allow it to move forward and made sure the American public knew it was happening. It would have been the principled play and it would have been the more strategic play. Instead, they sat back. They knew about it. They just sat back and did nothing. And here we are. Wall Street Journal goes on to say, readers may recall that only a few years ago, Democrats were in high dudgeon over the executive branch's collection of metadata against terrorists. They claimed the National Security Agency was spying on Americans. And in 2015, Congress barred NSA from collecting bulk domestic metadata. Federal investigators must offer legitimate reasons to obtain metadata from telecom companies, and they are subject to restrictions on divulging it. Yet here, the companies appear to have handed over metadata based on little more than Mr. Schiff's say-so. And in AT&T's case, in response to a request that was made before the House began a formal impeachment inquiry, before a formal inquiry, Schiff was subpoenaing private phone details of a journalist. AT&T released a statement Wednesday night saying it is required by law to provide information to government and law enforcement agencies. But AT&T couldn't question the validity of subpoenas in court and had grounds to do so given the highly political nature of these requests. And AT&T could have come out and made a public statement. The federal government wants us to release information on a U.S. citizen and journalist who's accused of no wrongdoing. We refuse, and they can levy all of their powers against us. We will never violate the rights of an American free press. Nope, that's not what happened. You see, you can't trust these big corporations, the same as you can't trust politicians. You know what? I can't stand any of them. The system is corrupt, and this is just more proof of it. They go on, I'm not going to read, they say Mr. Schiff's extraordinary, they end by saying, Mr. Schiff's extraordinary and secret plunge into metadata, followed by its gratuitous public disclosure, is one more example of the partisan score settling that motivates this impeachment exercise. In the cause of impeaching Donald Trump, anything goes. And I warn you now, you may be a liberty-minded individual. You may find yourself siding with the Republicans. But make no mistake, there is absolutely no reason to believe that once they gain power, anything will change. No reason to believe it. There are certainly some good people on both sides. I like Tulsi Gabbard and Dan Crenshaw. I think Dan Crenshaw's made a big mistake with the red flag laws for sure. But I respect them. I do. And I think Tulsi's wrong on nuclear energy. But I do find them to be principled individuals doing the right thing. I also really respect Rand Paul. Actually, I have a tweet here from Rand Paul. He said, by releasing the phone records of GOP members, real Donald Trump lawyers, and journalists he doesn't like, Adam Schiff is doing exactly what he's accusing the president of. using his power against his opponents for political purposes. There are some good principled Republicans. I certainly don't think it's Mitch McConnell or Lindsey Graham, but I do think it is Rand Paul and Dan Crenshaw. For all of their political positions I disagree with, I do believe that they're acting in good faith and they're respectable, principled individuals doing the right thing. I can say the same thing of Tulsi Gabbard. Not many Democrats, but, it's in the single digits for the most part for both parties. This is why I'm a milquetoast fence sitter. It's why I'm politically homeless. I don't trust any of them. So I'll say it one more time. I do respect Matt Gaetz. Not so much as I do Rand Paul, though. Rand Paul, I really, really respect. I really trust the guy. I disagree with him politically, of course. But in terms of freedom and protecting civil rights and an end to these wars, I can respect Rand Paul to a great degree. But I will remind you, my support is never, unshakable, and it's never 100%, right? Rand Paul's done things I disagree with, of course. So is Dan Crenshaw. So is Tulsi Gabbard. So is Bernie Sanders. Bernie lost to me. I like Andrew Yang. He's not really a politician. But there are very few Democrats I can look to right now and say they're doing the right thing. Jeff Van Drew from New Jersey 2nd, who refused to vote for impeachment. Much respect. And he's an area where he might face repercussions for refusing to vote for the impeachment inquiry. I can respect that. So I don't know too much about the guy. He's not a high-profile guy, but I'll tell you this, man. I don't care for any of these people. I think they're playing a game because they just want the keys to the castle. I think Matt Gaetz has played very, very well, but we'll see. We'll see where, what his future holds, but I do respect him for calling out the BS, for standing up, and he's done a really good job. Though, again, I disagree with a lot of Republicans on political issues. I think there's just, unfortunately, right now, a decent amount more principled and freedom-respecting Republicans than Democrats. Unfortunately, I can only point to Tulsi Gabbard and then Jeff Van Drew, but I don't know too much about Van Drew. So we got Rand Paul. We got Dan Crenshaw. Is that as far as I can go? The reason I won't give a shout out to these House Intelligence Committee Republicans is because they knew about this violation of privacy rights, the First Amendment. They knew. They didn't say anything. And I question why. I don't trust them. I do not. I will not. I don't care. I don't care about tribalism. I don't care about partisan politics. I care about those who stand up for freedom, respect the Constitution, understand the Supreme Court rules and sets precedents, and things can change, and not everybody has all the right answers. I certainly don't see it with 99% of our politicians. I don't like any of these Democrats running, save Tulsi Gabbard, Andrew Yang. And I'll admit it, I actually do kind of like Cory Booker as a person. Professionally, though, I don't think he's got the chops to be president, and I don't agree with his politics. But I do have some respect for the guy. I do. I think I do see him as at least a little bit honest enough, but not enough. So you know what? I'll put it this way. Tulsi Gabbard and Cory Booker, because I've seen some candid stuff from Booker that's made me respect him, but not enough. I think he's pandered too much, and he's nowhere near the level of Tulsi or Rand Paul or Crenshaw. And you know what? You may think I'm wrong about these individual politicians, and that's fine. I'll tell you what. I don't care what party you're in. I care that you stand by what you say. You defend the rights of the individuals in this country based on the Constitution. You understand that the law isn't always correct, and there is nuance and debate. And I'll leave it there. This is a dark turn, and Schiff should not be allowed to get away with this. And the Republicans should be ashamed of themselves for saying nothing when they knew it was happening. And I hope all of you can hold their feet to the fire. First and foremost, Adam Schiff, for doing it. And secondly, ask Nunes and others why they did nothing. Why they stand by and watch this happen. I would never do that. Maybe these other people like Gabbard and Paul and Crenshaw have stood by as well. And again, I'll stress, I think Crenshaw's really wrong on the red flag laws. Those are scary, man. I don't know, though. I'll leave it there. Stick around. Next segment's coming up at 4 p.m. YouTube.com/Timcast. I will see you there.